Welfare reform is in the air again. But before we talk about reforming welfare, we have to answer a couple of questions. What is welfare, and who is welfare for? Does welfare include tax credits for workers? Does it include the aid that you get to buy your mortgage interest deduction, which mostly goes to affluent families? I don't think that's what most of us think when we think of as welfare or being on welfare. For most people, welfare means a safety net. It means the provision of basic goods and providing for basic needs for those who are down on their luck. Basic healthcare, food, enough housing, and enough cash to live on, at least temporarily. Most people probably also think that welfare flows predominantly to those who are the poorest in our society. But that's less true today than it used to be. So in 1979, for every dollar spent on safety net benefits, 75 cents went to those in the poorest 20% of the distribution. That's households, family of three, with less than about $37,000 a year. But that number has declined, and it's now about 50 cents for every dollar. Meanwhile, the share of welfare benefits, safety net benefits, going to middle-class households, defined as those in the middle 60% of the distribution, has risen to also reach about 50 cents for every dollar. In other words, today, about half of our spending on the safety net goes to middle-class families. We've seen the biggest increase in the share of safety net spending for the lower middle class, for those in the second income quintile from the bottom. But actually, the increase has been seen across the middle class, with the share doubling for each of those three quintiles in the middle 60% of the distribution. So that today, for every $7 we spend on safety net benefits, $1 goes to households and families in the middle of the income distribution. That's families of three with incomes between $63,000 a year and $95,000 a year. This doesn't mean that the poorest Americans are less reliant on the safety net than they were in the past, because we're spending more on those benefits over time. And in fact, for those in the bottom 20%, the poorest, actually a higher proportion of their income now comes from those safety net benefits than was the case in the past. It's also worth saying that some of these statistics are hard to get at using surveys, and it's hard to precisely estimate what's happening, particularly in lower income households. But the broad trends here are clear and consistent with other studies. Over time, the share of safety net spending that is going to working class and middle class families in America has increased, including among the elderly. These are important facts to bear in mind as we debate welfare reform again, and indeed as we consider more radical options, such as universal healthcare or even universal basic income, ideas which are rising up the political agenda. Welfare, if it ever was just for the poor, is no longer solely for the poor today. And that might change the way we think about welfare altogether.